The crystal chandeliers shimmered like captured stars inside the Royal Meridian Hotel, their golden light falling on faces that had forgotten what humility felt like. Laughter filled the grand dining hall, polished, hollow laughter, the kind that sounds beautiful but means nothing. It was the laughter of people who had everything, mocking those who had nothing, and in the middle of it all sat Victor Harrington, a man whose name was whispered in boardrooms and screamed in headlines. He had money, power, and the cruel habit of turning people into entertainment. That night, his eyes fell on a trembling waitress holding a basket of roses. "Mayam, sell me these roses in Arabic," he said, grinning. "And I'll pay you $100,000. The crowd burst into laughter. The sound was sharp, cruel, like glass shattering. Mayam's hands shook around the basket. For her, those roses weren't props, they were hope. A favor she did for the restaurant owner, a small chance to send money home to her mother in Syria. She had fled war, hunger, and loss, only to find mockery waiting in this golden cage of luxury, but that night, something inside her refused to bow. She raised her head, looked straight into Victor's arrogant eyes, and decided to answer not in anger, but in grace. That was the night a waitress taught a billionaire what wealth truly meant. The Royal Meridian Hotel was alive with splendor that evening. Gold-trimmed curtains framed the tall windows, and the orchestra's soft melody mingled with the gentle clinking of crystal glasses. Waiters glided like shadows between tables, each carrying trays heavier than their dreams. Mayam stood near the edge of the hall, her uniform crisp but her eyes tired. She held a small basket of red and white roses, offering them to guests who barely looked at her. For most of them, she was invisible, just another face serving in the background of their perfect world, but not tonight. Tonight, fate decided to place her in the spotlight. Victor Harrington sat at the center table, laughing too loudly, his expensive watch catching the light like a small sun. Beside him sat Sheikh Rashid, a royal investor from Dubai, calm, composed, his presence commanding quiet respect. The two men couldn't have been more different. When Victor's gaze landed on Mayam, mischief curved his lips. "Come here," he called out, his voice booming through the hall. Conversations dimmed. Heads turned. Mayam hesitated, then stepped forward, her heart pounding like a drum. She stopped in front of him, clutching her roses tightly. Victor leaned back in his chair, eyes glinting with amusement. "You're from Syria, aren't you?" "Yes, sir," she whispered. He smiled, but it wasn't kind. "Sell me these roses," he said, "but do it in Arabic. If you do, I'll pay you $100,000. For a second, she thought she had misheard him. But then came the laughter, high-pitched, cruel, echoing off the marble walls. Her throat tightened. She could have walked away, swallowed her pride, pretended not to care. But something inside her, something fierce and untamed, refused to let this become another moment of humiliation. She straightened her back. The room blurred around her, all she could see was the mocking smile on Victor's face. The laughter faded into a dull hum. And then, in a voice soft yet steady, she began to speak. "Ashtari hadihi al-warda by hub wa amal," she said, her tone melodic, her Arabic flawless. "Buy these roses with love and hope, for they speak to the heart before they reach the mind." The words hung in the air like music. Her accent carried pain and poetry, every syllable blooming with meaning. The entire hall went silent. Even the chandeliers seemed to still their shimmer. Sheikh Rashid's eyes softened, he placed his hand on his chest, the traditional gesture of respect. "Your words," he said quietly, "cry the soul of a poet." Victor's smirk vanished. His throat constricted. For the first time in years, he didn't have a comeback. Instead, he reached for his wallet, pulled out a check, and began writing. When he handed it to her, Mayam's eyes widened. $110,000. I can't take this," she whispered, her voice trembling. Victor stood abruptly. "You earned it." He turned and walked away, his laughter gone, replaced by something unfamiliar, humility. The doors closed behind him with a soft thud. Mayim stood frozen, the roses trembling in her hands. Sheikh Rashid smiled gently. "Use it," he said. "Not for yourself, but for others who've lost their voice as you once did." That night, when the shift ended, Mayim walked out into the cool night air. The city glittered around her, unaware of the quiet storm that had just passed inside the hotel. She sat on a bench across the street, holding the check close to her chest. Memories washed over her, the dusty streets of Aleppo, her father's arms shielding her from bombs, her mother whispering prayers in the dark. The scent of roses mingled with the salty tears on her cheeks. She looked at the check again. It wasn't just money. It was a second chance, not for wealth, but for purpose. In the months that followed, Mayim poured her heart into building something that mattered. She rented a small corner building in an old neighborhood and called it the Garden of Hope. There, she offered free English lessons to refugee women, taught them how to find jobs, how to rebuild their lives with dignity. The walls of the center were painted with soft hues of pink and white, and on one of them she wrote in Arabic, "From every thorn blooms a flower." Slowly, the garden grew, not of roses, but of courage. Women who once sat in silence began to speak. They shared their stories, their pain, their dreams. Mayim watched them bloom, each one a reflection of her own journey from dust to dignity. Years later, fate brought Victor Harrington back into her life. His company had partnered with a global charity, the same one that supported Mayim's foundation. When he entered the small community center, he froze. The woman leading the class, her posture proud, her smile serene, it was her. "Mayim," he said softly. She turned, her eyes lighting with recognition. "Mr. Harrington." He looked around, seeing the women laughing, learning, healing. The air was filled with warmth, the kind he'd never felt in all his years of wealth. "I wanted to see this place," he said quietly. "To see what you built." "It's not what I built," she replied. "It's what kindness built." There was a pause, heavy with emotion. He stepped closer, his voice barely a whisper. "You changed me." Mayim smiled faintly. "No, Mr. Harrington. You changed yourself, the moment you decided to listen instead of laugh." For a moment, they simply stood there, two souls once divided by arrogance and pain, now bound by understanding. Victor looked around the room one last time. The women were practicing new words in English, their laughter bright and free. The same sound that once mocked now healed. As he turned to leave, Mayim handed him a single rose. "For remembrance," she said. He nodded, holding it gently, as if afraid to crush the symbol of everything he had learned. The sun dipped low over the city, casting a golden glow over the Garden of Hope. Mayim stepped outside, the wind playing with her hair. In the courtyard, roses swayed in the evening breeze, red, white, and full of life. She closed her eyes and whispered to the wind, "Every word has power. Every kindness has wings." The camera slowly pulled back, showing her standing in the middle of the blooming garden, a quiet smile on her face, surrounded by women and children whose laughter carried through the air like music. One cruel joke had turned into a lifetime of hope, and in that small corner of the world, a girl who once sold roses in Arabic taught humanity a language richer than gold, the language of kindness.